get started. Welcome to the October meeting of the District 23 Zonta Says NOW think tank. Please remember to keep your microphone on mute during the presentations and ask any questions in the chat line. And please note in the chat where you are speaking from today. We've got a full agenda today, so let's get started. Firstly, we acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in all the places we meet from today and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. At each meeting, we like to acknowledge a female Aboriginal leader. Today, I want to acknowledge Melissa Andrews Wirramaba from the remote community of Nukur in southeastern Arnhem Land in Northern Territory. Melissa is the first person from Nukur to graduate from a university in 36 years. Melissa benefited from Nawayagiba Study Hub that delivers two-way university courses that combine Western and Indigenous curriculums for local Aboriginal students. You can see some of the subjects here. This hub provides pre-university courses that set students up to succeed on their university journeys. Congratulations to Melissa, you're inspiring the next generations. It's useful to remind ourselves of the links between increased greenhouse gas emissions and gender inequality. We use this steam train to describe the links. The train was developed during the Industrial Revolution at a time when humans began to increase their greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere. These have accumulated to form a blanket around the Earth, causing global warming and more extreme weather events. These extreme droughts, fires, floods and storms trigger social disruption, displacing millions of people and disrupting livelihoods and destroying homes. This social disruption magnifies any existing inequality, including gender inequality. And Zonta Says NOW seeks to stop the train by advocating for countries to meet their obligations under the Paris Climate Agreement and to close gender gaps in education, economic opportunity and decision-making. We use 3 tools to achieve this: our website, our think tanks, and our framework for action. We've developed many resources to help us learn how to build a better world for women and girls through taking gender equal climate action, and these can be found on our website, including our new disaster management leaflet. I'll invite Sue Lees from the Zonta Club of Melbourne on Yarra to introduce our first speaker today, who is Amy Steele. Over to you, Sue.
Thank you. So I'm really delighted to be able to introduce Amy to Zonta Says NOW. So Amy's actually one of my former students, and all the teachers here will know how special it is and how there's nothing better than seeing one of your students grow up to take on the world and for the better. So thank you, Amy. I'm very, very proud of you. So now, years after leaving school, Amy's now the head of office and global subject lead for climate risk and adaptation at Engie Impact. So that's basically a French company. Amy is, she's immensely passionate about climate change and reducing emissions, protecting the health of people and ecosystems, and she'll tell you a lot more about that today. She loves places like coral reefs, which is a very keen swimmer. She swims every day, regardless of the weather. And she loves snow-covered mountains. So that comes from your cross-country ski team days. So Amy is actually a top athlete. Amy did play for Australia for netball for a number of years, and she has become involved in volunteer advocacy work for groups like Sports Environment Alliance, and I think she's been quite instrumental in setting up some of these front runners and eco athletes. Very excitingly, Amy's in the current cohort to go on the Homeward bound program on a trip to Antarctica where they take STEM female leaders in 2024-25. I think that's a fantastic achievement. She is also not only a great sports person, but also very academic. Starting with a commerce degree, she then went on to a master's degree with the, probably going to say this wrong, the Wajari Noongar people in southwestern Australia to explore the interrelationship between fire management techniques, catastrophic fire risk, and the changing climate. She is also now doing a PhD, and I hope that you'll touch a bit on that too, Amy. And Amy is actually building a house in an eco-village near Margaret River, so she's going to tell us a bit about that today too. And she's going to tell us about her personal climate journey because it is quite profound, and sometimes experiences make a huge difference in your life. So, Amy, over to you, and thank you so much for doing this today.
Oh, thanks, Sue. That was a lovely introduction. And for those of you that don't know, I was on the ski team with Sue and her kids in high school, so we spent a lot of winters up the snow together. And there's some great memories. So it's lovely that we're still in touch. I've got a little presentation just to show some photos, so I might just bring that one up on the screen, which I might just need to be made a presenter to do so. But while that's, maybe Carole, if you can help me out with that one. While I'm, here we go, do.
You should be there.
Okay, share screen. So I'll just pop that one into, how's that coming through? Is that a full screen now for everyone?
Yep, that's perfect.
Beautiful. So I was thinking today to talk about kind of 4 parts of my climate journey. And the first one is about my why and sort of finding my purpose. And so that will kind of touch on how I went from netball to kind of a bit of a chaotic career, but to where I am now. And then I'll talk about my career now with climate action, decarbonisation, climate risk, and what's entailed there. I'll talk about my personal efforts in the eco-village and some of the stories there. And then I'll finish with a bit about my research and my PhD, which I love to talk about. So I can save some time for that. But I am, super happy for anyone to jump in and kind of discuss any bits if there was an appropriate time or to put into the chat. And Carole and Sue, if you want to stop me at any point and, elaborate on something, obviously feel free to.
If you can put any comments in the chat, then we can pick them up from there. Thanks, Amy.
Yeah, fantastic. So I will get started. So the first thing was just about finding my why, which, as Sue mentioned, netball was my kind of main purpose and driver for the majority of my young adult life. So I was in my first professional netball team at the age of just before I turned 16, just before my 16th birthday. And so even in high school and through uni, that was my whole, that was kind of what got, had to get me out of bed at 5:30 a.m. and get to training. So I had, a lot of my life and efforts were concentrated around netball, and it was great in a lot of ways, gave me a lot of privilege, gave me a lot of life experiences, but it also meant a lot of sacrifices. And I think, when sports people talk about those sacrifices, usually you think about the sacrifices in terms of time, and you think about it like, I couldn't go to my friend's party because I had, to do this or that for training. But the sacrifice for me, as I reflect on it now, was not just time, but it was also a lot of the connection that I had time to form with the natural environment and country. Because as a kid, a lot of my holidays, I had, was lucky enough to just be outdoors and would go see our family in New Zealand. And that was a huge part of my life growing up, was just being able to have those relationships with country and the natural environment and be able to witness that and be a part of it. But when your time and energy is just so focused and concentrated on training and exercise and diet and then trying to get everything else in, that's something that you do lose, just that ability to really connect and observe and witness and be present. So I think that is a sacrifice that I was making during that time. And I think that's a big component of my story now is what and I'll get to that in a second, but what's really come back into my life afterwards. So basically for me, so I was playing netball, and after high school, I got into the AIS, and we were there to train for the World Youth Cup. And fortunately, I made the team for the World Youth Cup, and we won that in the Cook Islands, which was a really, that was certainly a netball career highlight. Winning that tournament, we were up by, if you've ever watched netball, we were up by 15 goals in the first quarter to New Zealand, which was just huge. And that sort of margin had never happened before. So that was really cool. And I went on to keep playing netball, including for Australia for a number of years after that. But it all changed when I was playing, and you can see in the photo here, that's my dress for the Adelaide Thunderbirds. And I'd left the Melbourne Vixens and gone to play in Adelaide for a little bit, just for something different. And when I came back to Victoria to play in Shepparton for a pre-season tournament, which was in March of 2016, I suffered a heat stroke. And it was, at the time, this is all information that's come to me afterwards, but I've since found out that the impacts I felt were nearly fatal. And it has left me with lifelong health consequences where I cannot play sport anymore. So not even at a social level can I participate in any sort of, exercise or activity. So that was it for me. That was the last game of netball I was ever able to play. And just like that, overnight, I went from being a professional athlete that formed a huge part of my identity since I was, 16 in high school, where that's really a huge time for forming one's identity and purpose in life, to just that being something I was just unable to even contemplate doing. And it was a weird journey for me at that time, because there wasn't doctors able to say, oh, hey, that's it for netball, it's gone. They were sort of thinking, okay, you might get better in a month, we're not quite sure, maybe 2 months, maybe, and then time went on, and that sort of hope just was still really there and present. And I thought, I'll be back during the season, or it's just pre-season, I'll be back kind of halfway through. And then every week just went on, and then I realized, okay, I'm not going to be back this season, maybe, but it will definitely be next season. And then time just went on, and that didn't happen, and I was still really sick. And life for me at that time was not easy either. I really struggled to get out of bed a lot of days. I needed help with food. I was living out of home in Adelaide by myself, so I had to move back to live with my parents and have them to care for me, just to help me eat. And around about 20 hours of the day I would be in bed, and the other 4 hours I was either lying on the couch watching, what show was I watching? That British one, I'm trying to remember where they're all in the castle. Anyway, do you know?
Downton
Abbey. Yes, Downton Abbey was my thing that got me through those dark days. Either watching that on the couch, or I would get my dad to set up like a rug on the lawn and just lie on the lawn outside. So it was not a lot of physical activity, but that time that I could go out there and rest on the lawn, it was, and this is many, many months of this state. It did, things just started to click over time, to the point where I woke up one day and just everything was crystal clear that my purpose in life had to be to stop this from happening to other people. And that, what had happened to me as a result of extreme heat and playing sport was something that I should have been resilient to as an elite athlete. And I had just broken the team's fitness record. So I, was at peak fitness. Was at peak health. It shouldn't have happened to me. And then it really triggered me to think, well, look at all these people who've got a lot more vulnerability in their life. I've got the privilege of having an air conditioner, you know, all of these things that would have otherwise led to resilience in such an event. And yet, if this is still my life experience, then what else is happening around the world? So it was a big time of opening my eyes. And I guess, you know, you think back to that period, and I described it as dark days just before, but it seems now to have been a bit of a gift of realization to see and, you know, wake up to what's going on and really drive me towards the purpose that now fills my life, which is climate action, and looking at trying to not just reduce emissions as fast as we can, but try to protect ecosystems and just build awareness about what we can do, especially to the humans in face with extreme heat and in the sporting arena. So that's a little bit of an overview. And then in terms of the academics and where I sort of went, it does jump around a lot, which I think is interesting. And I've shared this with some high school students before when I've given a little bit of a talk about my career journey. And I feel like that's sometimes people get scared by not knowing what their path is. But for me, you know, I sort of started in aerospace engineering, and then I had to give that up when I moved to the AIS because they wouldn't let me study off campus. And then I thought I'll come back and I'll finish aerospace engineering when I finish netball, but obviously that didn't pan out. So I took a Bachelor of Commerce. That was the only one I could do online at the time. And then I accidentally ended up majoring in accounting just because the subjects that were online at the right time were that topic. And I didn't, because I was so focused on netball, I didn't really click that meant that I had to be an accountant. So I finished with this degree and I'm playing netball. So I'm like, oh, better look for a job in accounting then. And I ended up getting a job at Deloitte. But luckily, where the netball stadium was located in Adelaide, I don't know if anyone's calling in from Adelaide, but it's right up the road from SA Power Network. So my job that I ended up doing, just because of the location, I had to train twice a day, work thought, oh, let's be handy and let's get her right next to the netball courts. So then that led me into energy sector financial modelling for SA Power Network, just by default of it being the closest one. And from there, that was a really good foundation for now my career in decarbonisation, because I've had that really strong foundation in energy systems as well as the finance side. And so, yeah, it was all just a bit of a kind of confluence of errors, but in a nice way. I think we're all sort of on that roundabout journey. So when I did have that kind of moment of, okay, this is what I've got to do, Deloitte it was also a really great time in the landscape because the TCFD was in its sort of foundational stage, which is it's called Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure. And it was basically this global reporting mechanism that was being established for companies to eventually mandatorily disclose what climate risk and decarbonisation meant for them and what they were doing on climate change. And so when I was inquiring to say, can I, you know, move towards this subject still in Deloitte with my energy sector background, there was that opportunity that came. So it was a little bit of right time, right place. And when I landed there, I thought, okay, let's get some more education behind this. So I did my master's in environment and climate science at Curtin. And I'll touch on that in a second, but that was a huge journey as well in itself, because part of that I did it one subject that I thought, oh, this would be kind of cool, but I've already sort of felt like I had a good foundation in Indigenous knowledge and science, and the topic was something of the nature of Aboriginal sustainability or Indigenous sustainability. And in undertaking that subject, it was just such a huge wake-up call at how little I knew. And, you know, I felt like I was going in there with a good foundation. And, you know, I just felt like so shocked that I could have got to, you know, a fairly educated state of my life and just known so little about that part of Australia and the real wealth of knowledge that resides in Indigenous sustainability. So that was what's led me to now kind of to do my master's research piece with Wiradjuri people on climate and fire, and now continue working with the Wiradjuri and our people on climate and adaptation decisions. So we'll get to that in a sec. But you know, through that journey, so after I got my master's and had worked at Deloitte for about 8 years, maybe 9 years, it was time for something different for me. So I was headhunted for the current job that I'm in now at Engie Impact. And to me, that opportunity was quite exciting because they had a bunch of projects, like in WA at the moment, they've got the world's first green ammonia plant that's in commissioning. So I felt like, okay, this is a good opportunity to really see, not just be talking about it and reading research, but to really like see this technology coming along and see how we can further that. What are the barriers that we're seeing commercially to get those up and running? Because as much as we all want to pursue a sustainable life, you know, without that technology being available, it does limit us in some of our decisions. So that was my inspiration there. But I'll pause there in case there's any questions. Otherwise, I'll keep going to talk about some of my career.
Where's your green ammonia project being undertaken?
That is a great question, Carole. It is on Murujuga, so the Burrup Peninsula, and it is in connection with Yarra. And for me, it's a hot topic because I did have a lot of internal, is this the right thing to do? You know, its location is adjacent to where the Scarborough offshore gas field is, and Murujuga is the home to over 1 million petroglyphs and rock art. That's the most culturally significant place in the whole of Australia from an Indigenous history point of view and heritage. And including in that rock art is the earliest known depiction of a humanoid figure, dated about 40,000 years old. So that's, in some dreaming, that's where actually Aboriginal dreaming begins and then spreads across the country. So it's hugely culturally significant. And there's some conflicting science that shows how the burning of natural gas is deteriorating rock art. Arguably, some people say that they've got studies to show that burning of natural gas does not decay rock art, but those people have also been paid by Yarra and others. So the conflict is quite evident that there is new research that's supposed to be, objective, that will now be trying to close those gaps from a multi-year perspective to give us some concrete evidence. But anyway, the location of the plant, Yarra was already there. So the only way for Engie to jump in and do the green ammonia project was to co-locate with them. And so that, there is that internal conflict there. It's like, is this the right thing to do? From a naive perspective, producing green ammonia seems like a good thing, but to co-locate it in that industrial hub that's already causing so much cultural damage is that conflict. And I think that was a big wake up for me to see that a lot of these renewable energy projects, they do actually have those tensions of cultural and social and environmental harm that may come about even when we are pursuing something that seems good on the cover, which is renewable energy. So just being aware of that and trying to reduce those risks at every stage, I think was a good learning to come for me out of that process. But I'll flick ahead to my next slide, which is just talking about basically decarbonisation as a concept and climate risk. So there's really two things. Can you guys see all the faces? Should I get rid of those so you can see the side, or have you got a full screen?
It's fine here. Yep.
Okay, cool. So there are two main parts of my career at the moment. One is decarbonisation, so it's trying to work with large bits of infrastructure, mostly mining in WA. They're our biggest emissions, Rio and BHP combined held prior to their recent carve-outs, each 1% of the world's emissions, so combined 2% of global emissions across scope 1, 2 and 3. So for me, that felt like a big area where I could spend a bit of energy but have a big return on investment for that if we could really get those companies to decarbonise. On the page here, there's just a bit of a indication of where emissions are projected to be heading and then where they need to be to stay on the 1.5 degree pathway, just so that you can get a bit of, and I'm sure everyone's familiar with this. So this is global emissions as well, keep in mind. So you can see that the intersect at zero occurs after 2050. And the reason for that is because developing nations have got a little bit of buffer. So when we talk about 1.5, net zero has to be before 2050 for developed economies. So that's just that little bit of nuance there. But effectively, you know, my work there is in trying to accelerate this decarbonisation. So help to get mining and other heavy emitters to stitch together the energy system that is resilient to a changing climate that can also function at net zero. So looking at the technologies that can be deployed through the system to get you there. And my global expertise has just come out of all the concoction of weird study that I've done. So I find myself in a position of knowing about climate risk as well as decarbonisation energy systems, and then the finance side. So it all kind of, I suppose, has concocted me into a subject matter expert of climate resilient and zero carbon energy systems. And so where that intersection lies, so the economics of building something that can withstand the changing climate as opposed to just a zero carbon system. And that is currently a major gap in global planning and also literature. Even the IPCC say that the chronic effects of climate change on renewable energy systems is not a well-researched field of science, and it's a gap in the literature at the moment. So, you know, especially in WA, it is my main study area, but I can think the eastern states as well. When we see things like extreme heat, it's not commonly known that maybe it is that solar derates and loses its performance at 25 degrees, but actually wind turbines as well, they take a derating, and that begins at 37.5 degrees generally, depending on the turbine. But in some cases at 42.5 degrees, the entire wind turbine is an outage. So, you know, you're thinking about the resilience of these systems in extreme heat weather. And from a solar panel perspective, derating at 25 degrees, it's only minimal. But once it hits 45 degrees, it basically falls off a cliff. And at 50 degrees, most panels produce almost zero output. So, you know, you're thinking, okay, the Pilbara, beautiful for solar resource, but there's a lot of days already that are occurring at the 50-degree mark. And so my main focus is on building the resilience of those systems to some of these extremes, because things like resilience of humans in extreme heat is going to be highly compromised if we have no power. So trying to connect all these threads together to help, you know, bring down not just the emission pathway, but also the consequence of some of the extremes that we inevitably face already today and growing in the future. So that's a little bit about my career, but I don't know if we had any questions there, or if I jump on to next topic.
Yeah, I think keep jumping on, Amy. Be
Cool.
good.
So just the other thing was just my kind of personal efforts, and I thought, cool story, I'd talk to Sue about it as well, building a house in the eco-village. So I found it very hard to live sustainably as I would like in Perth. And then I found this eco-village, and it was all kind of like packaged up, ready to go. They'd done the research about what, you know, constituted a sustainable home and the systems that you would need, and water and waste and energy and building materials, and it was all kind of off the shelf, ready to go. So I thought, this is great. Saves me a lot of time having to do all that research and homework. So you can see there that this is just my house that's getting built. It's taken a really long time, but that's a COVID side note and unrelated to the building, you know, itself. But you can see the bottom story there, hempcrete has been used, and hemp's a beautiful sustainable material. It's carbon negative, can be grown for a perennial crop, so you don't lose the roots, can stay in, and it's beautiful for thermal efficiency of the home. It breathes, it's got antibacterial properties, so it's a really nice and sustainable building material, and hopefully that'll be a lovely house when it's done eventually. yeah, and so then the other part of that story in terms of personal journey that I wanted to share was just about swimming and what that's meant for me. So swimming was my first exercise I was able to do post heat stroke. And at the first time I got into the ocean, I felt like, a bit, because I've lost it, all this ability to exercise. And so I didn't feel like it was going to be something that I'd be able to do. I just kind of hopped in. And then there was actually a 90-year-old who was swimming out across the bay. And I thought, geez, if he's able to do it, maybe I should just give it a go. Like, I'll just kind of see how far I get. And so I started, and I kind of just got to one buoy and then came back, and that was enough for me. Went on board a pair of flippers, as I was encouraged from one of my friends, and gave it a go in flippers. And I got quite a ways out and a ways back without overheating, just because the ocean's obviously cooling me down at that point. And then after that, I just was in love. I just found something I could do. I could move my body again. I didn't have to worry about getting too hot. It was, just such a gift. And I think the other real gift that gave me was that connection again with every day looking at the seafloor, seeing how much it moved, how much it changed. Even just now, I've been away from Margaret River for over a month, and the seafloor is barely recognisable. All the seagrass have flowered, the kelp is come in. It's totally different colour under there, and also some of these days in winter, the waves just get you and knock you around, and you're just a little just a little tiny. I don't know what the right word is, but it's really humbling, because you just can feel yourself in the ocean as almost powerless, and that the dominance and the greatness and the vastness of the ocean compared to just one person, it's a beautiful, humbling experience. And I felt like that for me just was a really good balance between really having that ambition and drive to try and solve the climate crisis, but not get caught up within that, to just be kind of brought down every day to know that humility and where you kind of sit. So I feel like it's a really nice concoction of, like, obviously I want to use my skills and gifts towards doing something constructive and trying to help reduce climate change, but at the same time, it's not all about me. I'm just one little tiny piece. So that was that part of the story. And then the last thing I was going to talk about is just the PhD. And so, as I mentioned before, managing climate threats to healthy country in the research archipelago, that's my topic. But you can see in the photo here, this is Figure of Eight Island. And the research archipelago is off the coast of Esperance, or Wurundjeri country. And so that's kind of halfway, I don't know about halfway, but somewhere between Perth and Adelaide. If you get to Adelaide, you've gone too far. But they've got a bunch of granite outcrops in these islands. There's about 150 granite headland islands that formed about 13,000 years ago after the last glacial maximum. So they were once connected to the headland. And the cool thing about that is there's a lot of cultural artifacts on these islands from 13,000 years ago, when there was land bridges to be able to access them. But they're also home to the most globally significant breeding colonies of seabirds. And there's a species called flesh-footed shearwater, which is, it's known as yowli in Noongar language. And it's a really significant bird also in Tasmania, which I know there's a few people who are calling in from Tasmania. So mutton bird is the other term that gets used. And as you can see in this photo, there was a fire on the island. And because of climate change in the region, lightning storm, and therefore the potential for lightning united wildfire, is accelerating. And what happens during a wildfire is, you can see, like, a lot of this country just goes up and gets scorched. There's not a lot of moisture on these islands that stops it. And because it is that heathland, it does spread and accelerate quite quickly because of the high connectivity of vegetation. And what that means for the seabird burrows is they lose the vegetation cover and the soil stability drops out. So there's a collapse in some of the burrows. And we have found on visiting the islands after a burn that there's actually adult birds who could have otherwise flown away, who are just scorched carcasses on the island. So there's something in there, maybe protective mechanisms of their young, or whether they're just not evolved to understand fire as a threat, or whether the asphyxiation from the smoke gets them, too quick for them to react and flee. So it's a huge risk to the population of seabirds, because when you lose adult breeding pairs, it's not just their nesting failure, it's, the potential for many future generations that's lost. So this is a main topic to explore. And the Wurundjeri people are really keen to understand, could we reintroduce cultural burns on the islands as a protective mechanism, just to create some buffers around the burrows? And if lightning does occur on the island somewhere, can we just stop that from becoming a huge threat to just the burrow colony? And then in doing so, thinking about all the other avenues that are there on the islands. And one example is sea lions. Actually, quite often will breed and use these islands as a refuge. And does the cultural burn impact them as well? So we need to be thinking about not just one species, but all the species who use the islands, and how we can, manage human intervention in a way that's actually adding to healthy country and not getting one species to thrive above any others. So that it's a lot of pieces to play with, but certainly a really beautiful learning journey for me so far, and something that, the research world talks about co-design quite a lot, and how, we need to design, academia has to work with traditional owners to design research projects that are culturally informed and connected. But this one certainly came from that place. Like, after I'd done my master's with Wurundjeri people, they were really keen to say, here's what we want to do next. We want to explore this. How can you help us explore this? So that research scoping kind of began at that point in time, and we've just kind of kept the dialogue to get to where we are now. So I do feel confident that's not just me imposing my views onto Wurundjeri people, that it's very much, this is what we want to look at, and what are some of the tools that can help us get there. So yeah, I did have another slide just to kind of talk about that stuff, but I think I've covered most of those topics there about lightning united wildfire, how that's killing them. And certainly the lightning storm frequency, we've got the data sets there showing that is increasing significantly, in fact 100 times. So it's gone from 40 strikes per month to 4,000, and not all of those hit ground. Some of them are cloud to cloud, but just that sheer volume of increased strikes just increases the ignition risk monumentally. So it is important. And then the trend in Esperance is that drier climate, drying vegetation and soils. And I think we're all feeling that at the moment with the ENSO and IOD combination, really dry, hot summer coming up, and, what do we do about it? So that's really the question that's on the last part of the slide, which is like, what do we do about it? Cultural management, how do we intervene? How do we intervene in a way that's going to be productive and not destructive towards healthy country? So yeah, that was kind of my my dialogue. But if there's any questions, we can keep going.
Well, Amy, I think for me, a couple of things have really stood out from your talk. The fact about the wind turbines and the solar panels not operating at those higher temperatures, that was a real thump between the eyes for me. Because you think about in the Pilbara, where they need the air conditioning the most, at the time they'll need it the most, they won't have the power. It's that just beggars belief. And when you talked about going from 40 lightning strikes to 4,000 strikes a month, the quantification is just surreal. That's just amazing. So thank you. Sue, did you want to thank Amy formally for? Was there any other questions from anybody else? Just check the lines.
Can I just ask a question? Can you just tell me what the DBCA and ETNTAC are?
Oh yes, sorry. This was actually, I just took this slide from a previous deck, so I didn't elaborate on the acronyms. But NSNAC is Esperance Daly Rack Native Title Aboriginal Corporation, which they're the Wurundjeri representative from an Aboriginal perspective. And DBCA is the department in Western Australia that's responsible for natural park management, stands for Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions.
Right, thank you.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of collaboration happening between these different parties in different states of Australia, and Victoria and Tasmania are formalising some agreements and pathways, but it is still very hard because you'd be familiar with like post-colonisation trauma and that trust of institutions, and then also some of the way that the institutions approach the Aboriginal corporations is like, oh, can you come and, you know, just grab some ranges and then let's do a cultural burn. And the idea is that having Aboriginal people on a burn becomes cultural.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, like unless the elder is telling us what to do and how to do it, it's not a cultural burn.
Yeah, yeah, very, very good point.
Amy?
Yeah, yes.
I'm just interested, that graph you had with the trending line and where we should be. Obviously, that's for the global consensus, is it? And not just Australia's. But I was thinking with these wars going on, with all the emissions that's happening, with all the burning and everything else, it won't be helping. And I don't know, it just seems pretty daunting to try and reach those targets when all this is happening in the environment, you know? Yeah,
I know what you're saying, Dawn, and I think as soon as we start to think about it as a global kind of contribution, then you do feel a bit helpless and a bit like, well, what can I really do? But again, that just brings me back to my position in the ocean and think, look, I am just this tiny little thing in this whole expanse of the world. So the best we can do is do our bit and help other people to do their bit, and just try and move that along, move that dialogue along. And if we do that, then I guess we've got nothing really to look back on at the end of life and be like, well, I should have, you know, tried a bit harder. Just give it our best is really all I can hold on to from a hope perspective.
Yeah, I think individually everyone's trying to do their personal bit towards, you know, reducing emissions, etc., and preserving like water and all this sort of thing. But you know, there's so much in the world that people, you know, because of circumstances or whatever, you know, they can't contribute really much. But I think Australia's got a huge potential with all our scientists and everybody else, and some of the research that they're doing, and you know, that we've got a huge contribution to make as a country.
Yeah. So, and I think there are also bits of like hope that emerge after tragedy. So, for example, after the 2019-2020 bushfire season, which was horrific, and I've not got the number in front of me on how many millions of tons of CO2 got released in that burn, but actually 95% was absorbed back into the ocean through a phytoplankton bloom event that was spurred by the iron fertilization of the Southern Ocean. So the ocean evened it out, and then it became a primary production cycle of, you know, tiny phytoplankton, zooplankton, bigger fish, whales. And so that population kind of leveled out those emissions through that cycle pretty quickly, it was really, for me, that was really hopeful to see that it's not necessarily like some of these events can occur naturally, but it will also even out in the ledger naturally. Not to say that we don't have to, humans haven't got a role, but it's not entirely a hopeless battle.
No, I actually watched some of the World Ocean Day information they had last year, and it was amazing to see there, which I didn't know about, was the seagrasses and how that absorbs like trees, you know, some of the baddies, and people don't realise that the ocean plays a huge role.
So Amy,
sorry, can I just hi Amy, it's Andrew here. You said something about iron causing the phytoplankton bloom. What's that all about?
Yeah, so in the Southern Ocean, it's nutrient deficient, and it's a lot of oceans, when they receive iron through either one of the mechanisms in the Northern Hemisphere is from dust off the Sahara Desert. So dust storms can contribute, but then also fire is a great way of depositing iron from land into the ocean. And that's why I love seabirds as well, because actually they deposit ocean nutrients onto the land to give the nutrients back to land to help fertilize. But yeah, wildfire is a great way of shedding nutrients off the land into the atmosphere that then travel through the southwesterly wind bracket that ended up putting the bushfire off the coast of Argentina, like the convective plume of smoke that had occurred in the dust particles that arose from the fire, traveled all the way to Argentina, which is where they were deposited and created a phytoplankton bloom because of that iron that was added. It's a nutrient deficient in the Southern Ocean, so it really spurred primary production there. And there's, I guess, satellite imagery has got some good to it as well. It was able to show, over time, that occurring about 3 months after.
So does that mean we should be sort of getting some dust from the Pilbara and spreading it around the oceans, or what can we do with this?
Well, this is another interesting thing. So the combination of iron and manganese can also bypass the primary production circle of dissolved organic carbon to deposited seafloor organic carbon stored matter. So I don't know if you've sort of seen, there's some research out lately about how much carbon is on the seafloor, deep sea carbon stores. So there is a mechanism through which iron plus manganese reacts in a way that doesn't fertilize primary production and takes it straight to the seafloor. So there's, I guess, what I'm saying is it's just that little bit to be cautious, because what you can avoid there is the phytoplankton, zooplankton bloom, and take it straight to the floor where there's no basically food production happening.
Complex, yeah.
Yeah. And humans have got a great knack for stuffing things up. So I think it's like, be cautious before you go in.
Yeah, we've had a lot of practice doing that. Yes.
So, Amy, on that note, I want to say thank you. You are really inspiring. You are definitely at the forefront of climate action and climate thinking. And it's so good to see the work you're doing, not only professionally in your position, but also academically with your work with Indigenous Australians. So I think we're all very happy to know that there are people like you working on these problems. So thanks a lot.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, everyone. Stop the...
And you're welcome. Yep. Amy, you're welcome to stay if you want, or leave, whichever you want to do.
I might cruise. I've got some PhD stuff I've got to tackle. Yeah. So
no
good to meet everyone.
Thank you so much. That's brilliant. Thanks, Amy. Much appreciated.
Bye.
Well, I've now remembered to share my screen, which I hadn't done earlier. So I'm sorry about that, everybody. And now I'm going to introduce Vicky Carman-Brown. Many of you will know Vicky. She's a member of the Zonta Club of Devonport in Tasmania. And her own climate activism journey began when she fought to save Lake Pedder in Tasmania at the age of 15. And since then, she's worked on to conserve the environment and educate people to understand the environment better and take more care of it. Her story is one of advocating for gender equality and taking climate action to the most remote parts of Tasmania, Northern Territory and Western Australia. And you can find out more about Vicky's climate journey on our Climate Champions page on our Zonta Says Now website. But today, Vicky is sharing her experience of hosting an I'm Ready event. Over to you, Vicky. I'll change your slides for you.
Thank you very much, Carole. Okay, so would you like to play the video for us first, Carole?
Will do. Here
Thank
we go.
you.
Oh,
hello, everyone.
I think I might need to put this thing on.
1 million women, and welcome to your get together. No matter where you are, what time it is, I'm just so excited that you are together, you are connected, and you are part of this really important conversation. I'd like to acknowledge the land that I am speaking to you from today, the Dharawal country, and to pay my respects to the elders past, present and future. I live in the Illawarra region of New South Wales, in this beautiful coastal strip, in between the escarpment and the Pacific Ocean. You know, listening and learning from the wisdom of our First Nations peoples is is so fundamental. Understanding that the lands and the oceans and the waterways are living systems. Having this relationship with our earth is the first step to climate action. And we need to feel that in our hearts, not just articulate that in our heads. And we need to feel optimism in our hearts too, that active optimism. The optimism that comes from the conversations that we're having and the actions that we are taking. And that's what your get together is all about. And that's what our new campaign, I'm Ready, is all about. So let's get this conversation started. We've given you a starter pack which has got lots of ideas and conversation starters and a flow for your get together today if you want it. We've identified 3 key things that we believe will have a really big impact over the coming years, and we would love to kickstart that conversation with you today, but also let your conversation flow. And if there are other things you want to talk about around climate, then that's fantastic too. And at the end of your get together, please will you all fill in our survey, each of you individually. And it's really important. It's important to gather this information, to know what your questions are, to get all this information from all the conversations that we are having, because it's important for us to create the content that's needed over the next couple of years. And there's also a place in your starter pack that you can see what else we've got going on outside of this and what are the activities that you can be part of. Before I started 1 Million Women, I used to be a cosmetics manufacturer, and my life was really different, and I was disconnected to climate action, to this issue at all. But I did something really, really simple. I got our household electricity consumption down, and when I saw the bill and I saw I had saved all this money and all this pollution at the same time, it was in that moment that I realized that I was powerful and that everything I do shapes the world. And I started 1 Million Women a little over a decade ago, and now we are 1 million women across our social media channels. But this is the decade that counts more than ever for climate action, and it needs us all to do whatever we can wherever we are. And that's why we have launched I'm Ready. It is to galvanize our community. It is to rally women wherever we are. And this conversation that you're having today is really important to that. So I would like to kickstart your conversation with one question. What climate action do you do in your life that makes you feel powerful? Share that with the group. Never underestimate the power that you have and the power that we have collectively to really shift things. Have a wonderful get together. Lots of love. Bye.
Okay, over to you, Vicky.
Thank you. And just wanted to let you know, of course, Natalie Isaacs, being the founder of 1 Million Women and author of 2 wonderful Women Can Solve Climate Change, really excellent. And I got to see her at one of her launch events in Launceston back in late June. And I went along to the event to get to know this, how to get ready, get together. And I held one get-together event in July, and then was able to share the outcomes of that get-together with Carole and Natalie at the District 23 conference. So that was very exciting. So the slides you see during this presentation are part of the starter pack that Natalie has generated, and we'll give you a bit of an overview. We won't be going through every one specifically too detailed. Good. So 1 million thanks. And as you can see, women are in a unique position to lead on climate action. No matter where you are on your journey, whether you are already a climate champion or just starting out, our new campaign, I'm Ready, is about getting us all to act together. And we're getting together because we want to empower you all on 3 things that Natalie mentioned briefly that we have identified as having a huge impact for climate action. Transforming our homes to get off coal, oil and gas, rallying our politicians, making our money count for the good of the planet. So women connecting with women, having conversations, supporting each other, and inspiring and galvanising other women to act too is vital for the decade of climate action. And when women are acting, they're also acting for women who aren't in a position to do so. So next, thank you. So at your get-together, or as in mine, we never underestimate the power that you have as one person, and we have as a collective to create change. So we're about to have conversations about one or all of the 3 key things, which will be worked on over the next 2 years. So next. So these are the 3 key areas. And I love the 1M, I'm talking with my local politician, I'm ready to transform my home, and I'm making my money count. So they're the 3 headings. Next. So how to organise your get-together. First of all, we'll start at the top here. Women connect with each other, sharing how we feel about climate action, talking ideas, solutions, the questions and challenges too, is what you get together is all about. So I got 6 friends, very wonderful, 6 female friends, a scrumptious afternoon tea, a comfortable lounge, and we sat around a dining table, and that was how we relaxed into this very exciting afternoon. Next. So who to invite? So obviously work out your companions to start you off. But I found that email communications worked the best, especially incorporating Natalie's starter pack information, and it's quick and efficient, and you make sure you capture everyone that you are talking to. So that's really important. Okay, next. So let's talk. Not that you need to read this, but it recommends 1 hour, but we took 2, a generous 2, with a cuppa and a chat to ease into the afternoon and before we started the conversations, which was really good. I found that valuable, and everyone was happy to sort of start generating great ideas after that. So I did ask them that one question that Natalie asked, what is the one climate action you do to make you feel powerful? Next. As you can see there, well, it became really interesting. There were 3 that were notable. The first one was influencing a bank to exit out of coal, gas and investments by 2025. And that was their deadline, but we've been working on them for some time. It was one of the big 4, and the official announcement came out just over 2 months ago that that's what they have publicly announced, that they will be exiting from investments in coal, gas and oil by 2025. So we felt that was quite a significant outcome. And another one at the table said that they purchased an electric vehicle that had made them feel quite powerful with that purchase. And another one, they had moved off the grid. They're completely generating their own power off the grid. And that's made a significant difference in their lives there. Next. So I'm rallying my local politician. Now, that's quite a bit in there. And if you do the key themes, it involves the talking too. But in Tasmania, it's a little bit different here. First of all, our electricity is generated renewably with hydro. But in Tasmania, and we've got a small population, smaller obviously, population, but 60% of our emissions come from cars and buses. We have a very poor public transport system. So that is one of the areas I feel I can tackle with the politicians, because the politicians saying, oh, you're doing it so well down there, you know, with renewables. but there are lots and lots of other areas that really do need important attention. And there was a significant survey by one of the universities around how to deal with the 60% emissions, which was fascinating. Okay, next. And I'm ready to electrify. So in Tasmania, again, it's a bit different. We don't have any mains gas. We only have electricity generated, but people do use gas, but they use gas cylinders and the like. So, and in my case, my husband was a wonderful chef and preferred to use the gas to cook with. But now that circumstance has changed and I need to get an induction cooktop. So that's going to be my next important action. And also longer term, I'm looking at getting an electrical vehicle, an EV. So next. So this third one, making my money count. Here's some of the areas that came up and were shared generously at our table over lovely afternoon tea. So if you read carefully there, the true costs of any purchase item that we buy, the true costs being carbon emissions, deforestation, water pollution, air pollution, animal welfare, landfill, poor working conditions, worker exploitation, inequality, and textile waste. So again, let's not consume for the sake of consuming. Let us use our money to support each other. Let's buy from small business. Let's buy from First Nations-led businesses. Let's buy locally. Let's only buy what we need and buy what's made to last so we can lift each other and not tear the planet down. Okay, so what I've done is certainly getting into pre-loved clothes, remodelling clothes, obviously getting natural fibres, but also making my money count is reducing plastic waste. I use a lot of produce bags, of which I've got many examples here. Carbon mile reduction, checking with my superannuation that they're not investing in coal, gas and oil. And mine, luckily, is working well for me, making my dollars count. And reduce my latest bill, my electricity bill. I've managed to reduce at this stage, based on comparison to this time last year, by $40. And I'm hoping now with practices I'm incorporating, I'm going to have a bigger reduction on my next bill. So that'll be really good. And my FOGO bin, food organics and garden organics, has made a huge difference to the amount of methane reduction with, of course, organics material in landfill areas. So finally, next. So what's next? Basically, we are keeping up the momentum, and I'm hoping to keep up my momentum by hosting another get together, but I'm going to try it at a club level. I'm going to introduce this idea at the next meeting and hopefully be able to share the benefits of this wonderful strategy that Natalie has put together. So next, and my lucky last slide, is I'm feeling more powerful. I'm feeling more courageous. I'm feeling more woman, I guess, and I'm ready to try that out. I did find the get-togethers empowering, inspiring, and I'm ready to get on with my next get-together happening. So I encourage you to do the same. And I'm asking you, are you ready? And thank you very much for your time, and I hope you're inspired too. There's the link below if you want to find out more. Thanks, Carole.
Thank you, Vicky. That was brilliant. It's really good to see what can happen when just a few women get together. Were there any questions from anyone for Vicky quickly? Is this something that you might consider introducing with other members of your clubs? A coffee catch up? It's a nice way of combining fellowship with purpose.
Yes, very much.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Well, time's moving on, so I'll just quickly go into the next areas. Share my screen again. Right, well, I want to just go through some international news. Zonta Says Now to Gender Equal Climate Action Members Survey was one of 3 surveys undertaken in the last few months. We had one for club presidents and also one for district governors. And the surveys were designed to provide a baseline of information on Zontians' understanding of climate justice, any sustainability actions they were taking, and to elicit their feedback on Zonta Says Now. The responses were received in August and September this year. And here's some of the results. A total of 611 Zontians responded to the survey, with 95% being club members. And we had responses from just 14 Z Club members, 11 supporting members, and 4 Golden Z Club members. So we couldn't really differentiate them from the main results. Responses were received from all of the districts, with over half of the responses from Australia and the USA. Only 10 countries had more than 10 responses. It was a bit disappointing, actually. More than 3/4 of the responses were from members who are aged over 60, and over 90% of Zontians were concerned or very concerned about climate change. 1/3 of respondees were not convinced that climate change was a gender equality issue. 1/4 had not read the statement on climate change, and 1/3 had not visited the Zonta Says Now web pages on the Zonta International website. So we've got many opportunities for improvement. Just under half of respondees had been impacted by an extreme weather event. And of these, half had experienced extreme heat, and over 1/3 had experienced drought or storms or floods. Over 60% did not have an emergency evacuation plan for their home, and this provides another opportunity for education. Overall, Zontians were comfortable talking about extreme weather events and gender equality. However, nearly 1/4 were uncomfortable talking to strangers, and between 10 and 15% were uncomfortable talking to community leaders, politicians, work colleagues, and family and friends. So here's another opportunity for us to support Zontians. Many Zontians express difficulties avoiding plastic, using public transport, car sharing, or cycling and walking. And there may be opportunities to educate and advocate in these areas to make it easier for them. More information may be required to educate Zontians about green banking, green investments, green gifts, and donating to the foundation. Over 1/4 of Zontians indicated they were also members of other gender equality or climate-related organisations. These 167 Zontians belonged to over 200 other organisations. Zontians reach many areas. Our influence is quite widespread. There were 611 responses, and the last question provided the opportunity for comment and feedback. About 40% of respondees provided some comments, with 231 providing positive feedback and 20 sharing their concerns. 144 provided additional information and ideas, which I've grouped into themes on the following slides. It became clear that we needed to focus on Zonta's mission and clarify our messaging. Many do not understand the links between increasing extreme weather events and rising gender inequality. Some were concerned that we're becoming an environmental organisation and we're moving away from gender equality. And others shared their difficulties in spreading the message when it was a low priority in their country or the topic was politically sensitive. Members were keen to learn more about many topics, ranging from court cases, switching to electricity, sustainable transport, recycling, evacuation planning, composting, and education on plastics. They want clear statistics and current research. They want to know how climate impacts women in developed countries and how we can influence government policy. There were many ideas about raising awareness through scholarships, mentoring, or events, such as having a women's expo. Many advocacy themes were suggested, ranging from women's safety and homelessness to having more women in STEM and research, working with governments, having more women in leadership, and projects for schools and rural communities. Advocating for more sustainable policies was a popular theme, especially around food, with food security, clean water, agriculture, and meat high on the list. Consumer issues such as supermarket packaging, fast fashion, and sustainable travel were also on the radar. And from an environmental perspective, wetland management, tree planting, and urban tree planting to create cooler landscapes were also suggested. It soon became clear that we need a Zonta Says Now communications campaign, with many comments around using more materials to raise awareness and having more "what can I do now" actions on the website. Social media was seen as a way to appeal to more young women, though we must ensure that all materials are well informed and we don't lecture to people. Some Zontians indicated that they do not look at the website and need other forms of communication, with suggestions including face-to-face activities, such as guest speakers, and discussing Zonta Says Now at meetings. Zontians felt that as an organisation, we should lead by example and be as sustainable as we can. Concerns were raised about the plastic envelopes for the Zontian magazine, and more information was requested about the cost and impact of meetings and materials. Travelling to convention also generated a few concerns. We were reminded that for many Zontians, English is not their first language, and translations must be considered when developing materials. A few respondees had found it hard to access the Zonta Says Now web pages, and one had commented that Zooms only addressed Asia and Africa, though it's not clear which Zooms they were referring to. It was suggested that there be a think tank for European districts, and we provide questions for think tank meetings ahead of time, which we did for the international one this recently. Finally, collaboration was seen as a way of raising awareness, as too few people know about Zonta. And given that so many Zontians are also members of other organisations, this may be quite easy to do. We're setting up an alliances team internationally to explore this issue further. So what's the next steps? Firstly, we're sharing the findings with the Zonta International Headquarters and Board. We'll develop and implement a Zonta Says Now communication campaign. This may include providing materials or courses to train district governors and lieutenant governors, and potentially advocacy chairs. We've created a few small Zonta Says Now teams to promote the virtual art gallery, develop social media messages, and investigate potential alliances with like-minded organisations. We'll create more teams as required to develop and implement the communication campaign. We aim to repeat the survey in April 2024 and share the results at the International Convention in Brisbane in 2024. So the information gained in the surveys has been invaluable, and we'll give thanks to all the members who took time to share their views. We can only improve from your feedback, and we look forward to hearing from more Zontians next year. So anyway, so that gives you the overview of what happened from our international survey. But what's been happening in our district and clubs? I'm aware that time's moving on, but I'll just keep going. As Vicky mentioned, we were lucky to have Natalie Isaacs at the district conference in Bunbury, just September. This seems so long ago now, but it was a really good event. Thank you, Sandra, and all the team, and Kay, and everyone that helped make it a really enjoyable conference. It was great. Sue, did you want to make any mention about where we're up to with the Women Taking Climate Action Award?
So for people who don't know, this award has basically been given by the Zonta Club of Melbourne on Yarra and Zonta Says Now. And now, as Carole just said, it's going to become a District 23 award. And it's actually an award to recognise women whose climate actions have engaged with women and contributed towards climate change innovation. So this year, for the first time, we're actually making 2 awards. And it's really interesting today because I think our whole meeting is very much tying together into the importance of country. So the reason we've got 2 women for this year is because they're both excellent role models. They emphasise advocacy, community education, and add a high level of scientific and academic understanding to their work. So one of the co-winners, Alana Mountain, has actually spoken to Zonta Says Now before. And very importantly, this year we're able to celebrate her 10 years of determination and dedication to protect the beautiful flora and fauna of the Central Highlands in Victoria, which has helped culminate in basically the decision by the Victorian government to end the logging of native forests by the 1st of January 2024, a decision that's going to help protect the densest carbon-rich plant on Earth, which is mountain ash. And when Amy was talking about the sea before, the carbon, Alana has also worked with women to encourage them to be tree climbers, an activity that was essentially male, but she's taught these women to not only tree climb, but basically to record the effects of wildlife in the Central Highlands, particularly the greater glider, which is an endangered or threatened species. And out of that work, they were actually able to bring a court case, and they won the court case because basically the judgment was that logging industry had not taken the necessary studies and steps to ensure the protection of a endangered species, which was the greater glider. And this then basically led to the Victorian industry shutting down native logging. So absolutely fantastic outcome, and I think a very timely celebration. And then our other award has gone to Dr. Professor Anne Polina. And Anne's a First Nations woman from the Kimberley area, and she's been involved in work with Healing Country, climate justice, water justice, with communities in the Kimberley region and actually around the world for many years now. So she's currently a professor and research fellow at Notre Dame University, Charles Darwin and ANU, and she's done the rounds of a lot of the universities. She's also a member of the Matuwara Fitzroy Council, director of the Kimberley Land Council. She's also on the working party with the Murray-Darling Basin, and there's a whole list which I won't go through. So Anne's very well known globally for her work with climate and water justice, particularly with First Nation women, because she has been advocating for them to be given opportunities to have a voice in this area, to have leadership opportunities in this area, and working to make sure that happens. She says herself that her idea is to protect Mother Earth, and that the Indigenous knowledge is really important in doing this. And I think Amy was just telling us that too. So she says that traditional women's law is about maintaining and protecting the spirit of the country, and it's essential to protecting country and humanity now. She promotes a two-way science which connects Western and Indigenous knowledge, and which again is the basis of Amy's PhD. So I think when we were looking at the applications this year, there was a little comment from Alana that stood out, which joined the 2 women together and joins Amy with them today. And Alana said, "I acknowledge First Nations justice, gender equality and environmentalism as the foundation of my work. I believe in connecting people back to the land in order to protect and conserve it for future generations. I strive for a healthier planet for all inhabitants. And I think after last weekend, it's really essential that where we recognise the importance of working with Indigenous people on climate problems and protecting the land. And it's wonderful that we've got Anne and Amy, Alana doing this and Amy doing it too, of course. So I think it's great to be able to acknowledge those women, and they will talk to hopefully Zonta Says Now next year, and probably Zonta Club of Melbourne on Yarra as well.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sue, for all the work you've done in bringing that all together. And just a reminder that from the next biennium, it will be a District 23 formal award. But that's just great. And we've got some amazing women in Australia doing some amazing stuff. I just want to just move on. I just put this up. Dawn Newman, I hope you're still there. Take this bunch of flowers for your amazing newsletter that you did recently. You gave a 2-page spread on Zonta Says Now. So we really appreciate that. You've done a great job with the Zonta Club of Northern Suburbs, Zonta Club Perth Northern Suburbs. Also, I noticed in the newsletter from Perth Northern Suburbs that they'd actually participated in a mental health first aid training day. And that's a brilliant way of taking gender equal climate action, because mental health first aid is a really good way of dealing with the outfall from climate events and climate anxiety and everything else as well. So congratulations. And I encourage all clubs to get behind the mental health first aid project that we have as a district. More information is on the District 23 website. And a quick reminder to get ready for this summer. We're expecting it to be hot and dry. So get the mental health first aid training, update your home disaster plan, and figure out ways you're going to keep cool this summer, because it could be a long one. So check out the links in the leaflet on our Zonta Says Now website. And this is thanks to Cheryl Scott. She sent through that at the District 24 conference in New South Wales, they had many climate-related speakers and prompted many questions, including one around where to recycle blister packs. And this tip was provided by Cheryl from District 24. Here is an easy advocacy action. Send the template letter to your local pharmacist to encourage them to purchase a collection box in their pharmacy. If you live a long way from a pharmacy, you can also purchase a satchel to collect your blister packs and send them back to Pharmacycle. It's really great to be able to share these tips. And I think this one featured on the War on Waste as well. So last couple of little points. I came across this global climate litigation report put out by the UN Environment Programme the other day. The total number of climate change cases has more than doubled since the first report came out in 2017. Since then, the cases have risen from 884 to 2,180 in 2022. After the USA, Australia has the highest number of cases. The report demonstrates how the voices of vulnerable groups are being heard globally. 34 cases have been brought by and on behalf of children and youth under 25 years old, including by girls as young as 7 and 9 years of age in Pakistan and India, respectively. And while in Switzerland, plaintiffs are making their case based on the disproportionate impact of climate change on senior women. So this little video, I think you'll quite enjoy. Actually, it's still here.
Nous sommes aujourd'hui devant la Cour européenne des droits de l'homme. En audience publique, la Grande Chambre va juger notre affaire climatique et dire à la Confédération, elle, la Cour spécialiste des droits humains, qu'elle doit protéger sa population contre le changement climatique qui met notre santé en danger. Ce 29 mars 2023 est une journée historique puisque pour la première fois, la Cour va traiter du climat et des droits fondamentaux.
I thought that was quite interesting. So you can take action at any age.
Yep.
So were there any questions about that?
Yeah. I think that's wonderful that it's finally being recognised as a human right rather than going through in terms of, you know, that necessarily the governmental process. Mm.
Yeah. And you think that in Australia we have Anjali Sharma and David Pocock taking the action through our parliaments at the moment, but it's really good to see how we've got the court cases as well. Things are happening from many different angles. But the actual UNEP report is well worth having a look through because they give you links to lots of the cases, and so that's just very interesting to see. Were there any other questions or comments on today's meeting? Any other news to share? I noticed in the chat line that Bronwyn was saying that the Central Goldfields Climate Action Stewarding Group are doing something similar to what Vicky was doing, of having kitchen table conversations. And several of us have recently assisted our youth council to hold, I think it's climate action kitchen table conversations in local secondary schools. And we'll repeat annually. Brilliant. Well done. That's fantastic, Bronwyn. You're always ahead of the game. That's great. That's brilliant. Okay, well, I think I think we're just about there. And so I'll just finish off today's meeting by reminding everybody that don't forget to consider donating to the foundation and the endowment fund whenever you can. And this month, why not acknowledge your friends and yourself for taking climate action? So our next meeting is in December the 16th, and we'll make this a bit of a party to celebrate the end of the year as well. We have a guest speaker, but we'll have some fun too.
Carole, we have got a guest speaker.
We have.
Yeah.
Yes, we have. We've got a guest speaker, but we'll make it a bit of a party as well to celebrate the end of the year. But so we'll look forward to hearing from our speaker and having some fun too. So please email me if you have any questions, and don't forget to check out the information on the website. And thanks again for all your participation and contribution today. Special thanks to the speakers for the time it takes to prepare and present for today. It's really appreciated. So keep breathing, keep smiling, and have fun on your Zonta Says Now journey. Thank you. Bye for now.
Thank you, Carole. Really inspiring. Thank you.
That's good. Lovely to see you all.